My model is actually very simple. It's just 60% median growth every year. And if you go back 5 to 10 years, roughly you see the same trajectory. But one thing that most models don't account for is that there will be a point at which people just stop using fiat currencies. So we can project out 10 years, 20 years, but the reality is we're probably not going to go to 20 million a coin. And eventually, at some point, we'll just use Bitcoin as the unit of account. So with money, you have three parts of paths to evolution: store of value, unit of account, medium of exchange. So unit of account right now, it's still the dollar. Even countries that don't use the dollar, their currencies are pseudo pegged to the dollar or directly pegged to the dollar. But eventually we'll just price things in Satoshis, which is the smallest unit of Bitcoin.
Bitcoin won't reach $20 million per coin because it will soon replace fiat money as the new standard of value. That's Jan3 CEO Samson Mow's most recent forecast. Mow believes that in the next 5 to 10 years, Bitcoin will exceed the dollar and become the final global monetary standard, with an estimated 60% annual growth rate. Not only that, but Samson also surmises that famous individuals like Donald Trump are utilizing Bitcoin to protect and increase their fortune. The dollar's power may decline as demand rises, which would result in less money going to wars and Bitcoin becoming the preferred financial lifeline in times of need. Watch till the end, because at the end of this video, Samson Mow will reveal how Bitcoin will disrupt everything we know, paving the way for a better future. Also, please, if you enjoy staying up to date with finance and crypto insights, consider hitting that subscribe button. Now, here's Samson Mow with his latest outlook on Bitcoin.
Trump is an interesting character. He likes to, I think he likes to say that he fulfilled his promises. So if you look at what he did in the previous election, he was talking about building the wall. Did they build the wall to the full scale that they said they were going to build it? No, but they built parts of the wall. So even if he only does a part of the Bitcoin strategic reserve, maybe he buys 100,000 coins. I don't know. But that is something. But at least we know that we have access to Trump through a lot of the people lobbying in the US. And we know that he is at least not against Bitcoin. And yes, he is, promoting altcoins and whatnot, but sometimes you have to choose the lesser of two evils. My model is actually very simple. It's just 60% median growth every year. And if you go back 5 to 10 years, roughly you see the same trajectory. But one thing that most models don't account for is that there will be a point at which people just stop using fiat currencies. So we can project out 10 years, 20 years, but the reality is we're probably not going to go to 20 million a coin. And eventually, at some point, we'll just use Bitcoin as the unit of account. So with money, you have three parts of paths to evolution: store of value, unit of account, medium of exchange. So unit of account right now, it's still the dollar. Even countries that don't use the dollar, their currencies are pseudo pegged to the dollar or directly pegged to the dollar. But eventually we'll just price things in Satoshis, which is the smallest unit of Bitcoin. Ultimately, everyone is going to use Bitcoin. It's either you accept it or you wait until you have no choice, because the person you want to buy bread from doesn't want a euro anymore. So at that point, do the regulations really matter? It's just near term. I think you can have good regulations or bad regulations, but the legal tender law, I don't think is really legal tender even in El Salvador, because merchants are not forced to accept it. Larger companies are accepting it because they want to make sure they follow the letter of the law. But by and large, most people don't accept Bitcoin yet in El Salvador even, and they're not forced to. So if I go to a business and I say I want to pay in Bitcoin, they say no, I can't call the police. I don't think anyone's going to enforce that. And I think the deregulation path of Argentina is probably more practical, just saying, just use whatever you want. And you can use Bitcoin as money, and there is no barrier there. There's no taxation on it, because you shouldn't be taxed on using money to buy, daily goods. And I think places like Switzerland are okay as well, because there is no capital gains tax. So you can, for example, in Lugano, just spend Bitcoin and buy whatever you want, and it's just treated as money too. And there was no regulation needed for that as well. So I guess it depends really on if there is anything currently prohibiting, because some countries don't allow people to use Bitcoin for payments as well. So either you need to amend that or make a new regulation saying, yes, Bitcoin can be used. So it's very different per country, but I think the countries that we are focused on are more in the developing world, and they are seeking economic growth and investment. So for them, it's not really worrying about all these things that maybe Europeans worry about, but they just want money to come in. States are going to want it one way or another. And right now, as you saw, the bulk of the holdings are from seizures from criminal activities. But in the future, that could change to mining, because if you look at it, at least the way I look at it, is a state is basically, they're the homeowner association. They operate the land and they have all the energy, and they can direct that to do different things, like mining Bitcoin, so they could mine it for themselves. And we already see that there is a potential for Bitcoin mining to balance grids. And if you're going to nuclear, you have a very large base load already that you need to consume. So why not mine Bitcoin with it? So eventually, there is no such thing as a mining company. It's just an energy company, and they all mine. And if they all mine, then and they're state-owned, then the state can produce its own Bitcoin. But I think the key is that we are engaging to make sure that if there are policies that come out, it's not bad policies, and there are protections in place to ordinary Bitcoin holders, rather than letting policies go unchecked.
Among the main tech assets, Bitcoin was the best performer in October 2024, yielding the highest risk-adjusted gains. With a remarkable Sharpe ratio of 435, it significantly outperformed industry titans like Amazon, Google, and Nvidia. Bitcoin surpassed some of the most volatile equities on the market, including Tesla, which had a volatility of 24%, even though its price volatility was just 11%. These numbers demonstrate how quickly Bitcoin is moving to become a universal currency. It is becoming increasingly recognized as a trustworthy asset because to its outstanding record and strong risk-adjusted returns. Bitcoin has shown more resilient than traditional currencies, which are vulnerable to governmental regulations and inflation. It has continuously produced robust returns even during volatile market conditions. Bitcoin is putting itself in a position to potentially replace conventional currencies in the future by successfully balancing risk and reward. Now, let's turn to Samson Mow for more on this exciting development.
Well, I think people that want to abuse the rules and abuse their power are going to do so anyways. And I think Bitcoin can change people for the better. So if you take two people as a test, and you give one of them, and both want to abuse power, and you give one of them Bitcoin, it's more likely that the one that you educated and got into Bitcoin is going to change, because they understand at least the Bitcoin ethos and maybe sound money. But the more important thing is that with Bitcoin, you can't really abuse the system, because the system treats everyone equally. So even if you're impoverished and you're unbanked, you have the same ability to acquire Bitcoin as Michael Saylor. I think that is the more important thing, just getting it into the hands of people. So, for example, El Salvador, they adopted Bitcoin, and maybe they have like 500,000 people using it, or 300,000. It's estimated, but at least those 300,000 people now have access to Bitcoin. Whereas if they didn't adopt it, then it'd be zero or close to zero. So I think, again, you have to take the good with the bad. So if a government accepts it and they endorse it, then the people are going to benefit, and they are going to have Bitcoin, which levels the playing field, I think, at the end of the day. And you do see some of this playing out in the US. So like President Trump is speaking at a Bitcoin conference. You have major senators there. Senator Elizabeth Warren is probably going to lose, or at least she's fighting a heated battle with Deaton for a Senate seat. So why are they able to compete, and why are they at Bitcoin conferences? It's because we have a significant amount of wealth in the hands of Bitcoiners now. So it is changing the game. I think Bitcoin defunds wars. It's difficult to finance a war if you actually have to go to people that have custody of the asset or the money. It's easy to finance a war if you can print the money. And it's the same for everything. Most government policies are not of the will of the people. And I'm from Canada, so I can tell you, we didn't want to buy the vaccines, but the government bought the vaccines. We didn't want the $84 million app that you use to register when you enter and leave the country, but they did that anyway. So if they had to ask and collect the money for that, no one would give them the money for that. And it's the same with financing war. So I believe Bitcoin will usher it in an age of peace, because the people that are corrupt, that want war, won't be able to finance the war. So the impact of the war, probably markets would tank and Bitcoin will go down, but eventually Bitcoin will go back up, because Bitcoin is likely going to be the only financial network that is going to be operating if there is full-blown war and sides are split up and lines are drawn across the board. One thing that people seem to forget is that financial systems don't work during wartime. You can't send money to anybody, and it depends on where you are and what app you're using, but probably a lot of them won't work. Venmo probably won't work. PayPal probably won't work. So everyone will just end up using Bitcoin. And bank balances will disappear for some reason or other. Maybe a bank data center is hit. So Bitcoin will be the only thing that functions at the end of the day.
Samson Mow highlighted how Bitcoin has the potential to be a positive influence by drastically changing the allocation of power and resources. He clarified that because the Bitcoin system is essentially fair and treats everyone equally, those who may otherwise be tempted to abuse power are less likely to do so. Even those without bank accounts or living in poverty have the same opportunity to acquire Bitcoin as people with riches. Samson emphasized how hundreds of thousands of people now have access to financial institutions that they otherwise wouldn't have because of the growth of Bitcoin in nations like El Salvador. He maintained that citizens still gain from having access to this decentralized financial network, even if governments that use Bitcoin have their own goals. He also drew attention to the changing political environment. He assigned the growing wealth and power of the Bitcoin community to the interest in the cryptocurrency being shown by influential people such as senators and Donald Trump. According to Samson, this impact has already changed the balance of power. One of his most impactful arguments is that Bitcoin could be a path to peace. Financing wars becomes difficult when governments can't just print money but have to rely on funds controlled by the people. With Bitcoin, corrupt leaders who wish to engage in conflict would struggle to get the necessary financial resources, which could deter wars from happening. If you found these insights valuable, don't forget to like the video, subscribe for more finance and cryptocurrency content, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, happy investing.